Alright, welcome back. I figure now is really just kind of a better time than any. Talking through some of this stuff keeps my mind occupied and on other topics here, and it's something that I wanted to do and just clear up for people that are purchasing, particularly the WarDragon Pros here most recently. Was pointed out that some of the guides, well, great feedback, honestly. Some of the guides and stuff that I have over the last however many months, or actually really a year. Some of them are out of date. Things have changed, and so the WarDragon Pro is meant to, out of the box, utilize the dongles that are inside and the SDR. To, not that it can't be configured to do something else, but they're tailored to detect and identify and track drone remote ID, as well as it uses the SDR to detect and track Ocusync 2, to some extent 3, I would say maybe more detective like 4, Ocusync and DroneID, particularly on DJI drones. It can be reconfigured again, and my hope is that there'll be some other exciting features coming here soon for the SDR, but it's really meant to be a headless, unattended sensor, particularly the WarDragon Pro, and it is set up where on boot it's providing that drone information and information on the WarDragon itself on two different ports that can be reached by third-party applications, such as the app that Luke is putting together for iOS and now more recently Android, so that you can out of the box network your WarDragon, do the initial setup, and yes, that typically requires plugging a monitor in order to set up your Rust desk and OpenSSH server and whatever else you may want to do to remotely reach that. You may need to set up a hotspot on it. You may need to set a static IP on the available external interface, whatever, maybe WireGuard or OpenVPN. But after that initial setup, the intent is that you run that headless, and on boot up, it's just sending you information, either to the iOS or the Android application, or, which I'm going to talk through here, you've set up another application called DragonSync, which, to be honest, it replaced the Sniffle to ZMQ that I showed a while back. And so that's why I want to show this video, and hopefully you can follow along. And at the end of it, you should be able to have one or more WarDragon boxes set up, which is kind of what I intended, and send information to a TAC server. An even easier setup would be to have each box do multicast, which of course, if you're on a local network and you have ATAC devices and things, they'll all see that information, the cursor on target information, dots on map. A TAC server, though, allows you the ability to send information securely to a TAC server, at which point any other endpoints that are connected to the TAC server can see that information. And you can do this on a WarDragon. Yes, there's enough resources if you wanted to install, for whatever reason, a TAC server on a WarDragon itself. But in this video, I'm installing it on just a pretty powerful laptop that I have. And you can see I'm logged in here on the TAC server site, and I have already downloaded the most recent 5.3 build. So I've taken care of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to a repository I have here that's a fork of the CloudRF TAC server repository. You can use that one, that's fine. I'm just using mine. Now this does assume that you have Docker set up on whatever it is that you're installing it on, and those steps are down here as far as adding an app repository. It also, I recommend as well, to set up Docker where you don't have to run it as sudo, and so these links and steps will guide you through that, and I have shown that in a previous video. I'm just going to git clone this repository down. I'm going to change into that repository, and then I'm going to copy from my downloads the TAC server release into this directory. And now I am going to make a change because I had been asked about sending in unsecure info to a TAC server, and you could do that. You can do that by adding another port here. I'll just make one up. 80. Let's see, 54. 8054/UDP, and we'll make that modification. It's not necessarily recommended to send it in like that, but you can. I'm also going to modify the setup script here. In particular, I want to just, for the sake of this video, and it's something that you can think through, but there is a setup of the IP address that this is going to be listening on. Now maybe you have a dual homed system with multiple different interfaces, whatever it may be. You can think about how you want to set this up and what IP address you want to listen on for your sensors to send in, but I'm just going to set it to 000 like you see here, just so that every interface I can essentially send in, IP address wise. You could also, I guess, if you wanted, there is a check up towards the top of here that looks to make sure that all ports that Docker is going to use are available. I'm trying to remember exactly where that is, but actually I think it's pretty up top here, right here. You could add 8054 here if you wanted it to check, so 8054, that's free and available. And then we'll use bash scripts setup.sh, and it's going to fail the checksum thing because I don't think, oh, maybe it is there. I couldn't remember if 5.3 had been updated. And it's going to unpack that zip file. It's going to download some necessary things for the Docker and the database setup. That might take just a little bit here. Alright, so I'm back. Both Dockers built. It's going through and setting up the certificates. And then the next part, depending on your resources, may take a little while as far as getting this connection to the database, but we'll see here. So that went pretty quick. That is the setup, and those Dockers should be running. You'll note the passwords below. Save those off, and you'll also have a certificate that was made in the TAC cert files. So if I look in TAC certs files, I'm going to grab the admin.p12. I'm going to copy that to my home Dragon desktop, and what we'll do is we'll go to another browser here. We'll go to our settings, privacy and security. Different browsers, maybe you need to do this a little differently. I'm going to view certificates, and I'm going to import this admin p12. Password by default is lowercase ATAK, ATAK, and we'll say OK. And then we'll hit this up on 0008443, and we'll say accept the risk. Yep, use the cert. I'm going to come in here, and we're going to take a look. Let's see, so we've got our dashboard. like things are okay. We can take a look at our inputs. That 8089 is there by default. We could add, let's see, unsecure, say UDP, authentication type, anonymous, and then what do we do? 8054. Everything else should be, let's see, we might want to put it on the anonymous group, I think, but this is adding, and you're going to get a warning that this is an unsecure port somewhere here. Let's see if we go back to 8443. You're going to see there's a warning now if you're using that unsecure port. For some reason, I thought I remembered having to restart. Let's see, data, configuration, administration, monitoring, plugins. Honestly, I thought I remember in the past having to at least restart the database Docker once. And you can see Docker PS that they're running here, the Docker server DB. But possibly 5.3 changed something. So we've got our attack server set up. Okay, I knew I would remember after the fact, so I went back. I'll plug this back into the video in case this is needed, but this is what I was referencing, where in the past I've had to at least restart the database that one initial time. And so what I was looking for was on the attack server dashboard, I guess you'd say, over under the hamburger menu. I was looking for administrative database. And so in the past, I may have had to re-index the database, or I, just clicked on edit and save. But it doesn't seem like maybe that is necessary this time. And then what I would do would be, but just in case so you're aware, Docker stop. I'd stop it and just start it that one time. I was trying to go through what may have gave me the indication to do that. It may have been a warning or something like that, but just if you want, you can do a stop and start of that particular Docker just that one time, and then give it a little bit, and it'll get itself back up and running. So yeah, that's all I wanted to address in case that's needed. But those Dockers are set up to where they will run on a reboot. So as long as you get it set up that first time, you should be good. Okay, and we have our additional port that we added. We have our cert added to our browser. I think it's worth showing one more thing, clarifying thing here, which is the DragonSync repo, which is in the WarDragon under the home directory WarDragon and DragonSync. And this is the repository that is going to set us up for our WarDragon to communicate into the attack server. I'll note here that there is a services folder, one of which has the DragonSync service, which I did start to install by default under the systemd, and I'll show that once we come back in the second part of this video on the WarDragon itself. But this DragonSync service, you can see that it would allow starting up on boot of the DragonSync repository using a config.ini file. And what do I mean by that? So the config.ini is right here. This would allow you to put information about your attack server configuration, particularly the host, the port, protocol being lowercase TCP or UDP, the P12 file like I just used in my browser here. You'd specify the file location, you'd specify its password, skip verify is good, and then there's some multicast information and then operational parameters that you can change so that you don't have to start up command line every time with 15 different flags as far as how you wanted the WarDragon to send information to a TAC server. Now, if you chose to run the TAC server on the WarDragon itself, I'll be honest, probably it's going to be a little more feature rich than the video I did as far as showing using TAR 1090 and those kind of basic scripts I've put together in order to send drone information into TAR 1090. It's much more robust with DragonSync and sending to a TAC server. So, and with a TAC server, you have WebTAC, and I'll just cancel that. We'll just be roughly where things are at, and yeah, you get a map, and you're going to get all the drone information as well as the sensor locations of WarDragon on a map. And so hang in there. I'll come back with another part of this video where we'll jump to the WarDragon itself, and I'll fly around a drone, we'll detect it, and we'll send information in here. And once you have this set up, it's pretty easy going from then on. The even easier route for when you want to directly connect to the WarDragon is going to be those iOS and pretty soon here an Android application that can do much like what DragonSync is doing, in that the apps can connect directly to the WarDragon on their ports that are providing the information and pull directly from there. And I find that very handy as well. But the primary initial envision here was, of course, ATAC, TAC, and I want to make sure that I've cleared up where things are with that and kind of set people up for success to get that WarDragon set up out of the box. So thanks for hanging in there. Hopefully this is helpful, and I'll be back with the really the even more important part of this, which is getting the WarDragon to communicate to the TAC server.